Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Carolyn Miller with National Franchise Institute. Carolyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
Hey, so give us a little bit of your background and what led you to National Franchise Institute.
Yep, I actually have been in franchise circles for a long, long time. I started working for McDonald's headquarters in Oak Brook, Illinois in 1984 and worked there for about 15 years. And when McDonald's infused capital into Chipotle, that's what brought me out to Denver. The National Franchise Institute is headquartered in Denver. And since working with McDonald's and Chipotle, I've also built ground-up Red Robins, and I've worked on with a couple of other franchise brands, CiCi's Pizza, and on the franchisee side for Carl's and Hardee's. So was doing architectural sales and meeting with prospective clients. I would always say if you think the time to hire an architect is after you've signed the lease, you've potentially already lost a lot of money. And people were saying, oh my gosh, where were you when we were building our locations? And no one was helping people on the development side. So that really was the stepping off point for the National Franchise Institute.
Well, I'm sure we can go a lot of directions, but that caught my ear because I always like to learn from other people's mistakes or learn secrets or learn better efficiencies. So when you're talking about, the time to talk about architectural design is not once you sign the lease, what's one of the biggest pitfalls that you find franchisees making in that situation?
If I had to pick the number one thing, it relates to timing, and it's timing of an entire development timeline. I think people, when they think about building new locations, they're thinking, for the most part, just of the time that the hammer is being swung, which is really only a small portion of the overall development timeline. Maybe 8 to 12 weeks, where a real development timeline is about maybe a year, depending on the type of location. And the other one is, it also relates to timing, but it has more to do with when you're doing stuff. You could be doing the right things, but if you do them at the wrong time, there's some consequences that really come back and add a huge cost to your investment to get your business open.
And that kind of makes me think, if we had in front of us right now the secret recipe to KFC, and we tried to cook the chicken, it wouldn't taste like they do because it's the timing of the ingredients or it's the correct mixture. So just knowing what to do, like you said, is just one piece of the equation, but knowing when to do it and in the right order and the right, combinations and things like that. I'd rather measure twice and cut once.
Absolutely.
So what's one of the things that is a big opportunity when you're talking to a prospective franchisee? What is an opportunity that you are going to help them with if they're thinking of getting some advice from you?
One of the unique aspects of the National Franchise Institute, first and foremost, is that our programs aren't taught by consultants and people with an opinion. They're taught by licensed attorneys, licensed CPAs, licensed tax professionals, licensed architects and engineers and general contractors and real estate professionals. So it's people with E&O insurance who aren't simply people who have done this in a past life and functioning in a consultant role. They're really in a professional mode. They're actively licensed and participating in the areas that they're the expert in. And we no one person can know everything, so we bring in subject matter experts for a variety of different areas of the development process, specifically to get new locations open.
That's huge because it's not someone that just talks about things. It's someone that is doing it and living it. And when you're talking about, licensed speakers, attorneys, architects, people that are in the know, then there's that trust factor that's being built up. And that's a pretty big piece because anybody out there can Google anything and get some kind of information, but is it the right information?
Exactly. And there's so many nuances, right? You can't just ask one question. There's always, on the third Thursday of the month that starts with the letter Q and the full moon is over Pluto, then this applies. But you don't know all those nuances, so you can make some wrong guesses. You can zig when you should have zagged, and it can cost you time and money, which is the kiss of a little bit of pain and failure in the franchise world.
Well, it reminds me of a concept I teach to my marketing clients, which is like if someone goes, well, I just don't know what to say in, my content marketing or my, interview series, I would say, okay, can you think right now, grab a piece of paper and a pen and write down the top 10 questions that you get, over the course of a month about your business. And they're like, yeah, I could write down top 10 questions, easy. And I said, good, that's assignment number 1, but guess what? Assignment number 2 is next week, is now to write down the top 10 should ask questions. So the frequently asked questions are just scraping the surface. They're easy. But for that perspective, whoever, like in your case, a franchisee, the top 10 frequently asked questions may be these here, but those are, what are the questions that they should be asking that they don't know to ask because you don't know what you don't know? So can you speak to a couple examples of a couple questions that, someone entering into the franchise world, what are a couple examples of a should ask question that they don't even know to ask yet?
Well, it's funny. I actually wrote a blog article a while back that mentions asking the most important question. And, whenever you're interviewing prospective service providers or general contractors or whoever, you're not an expert in the area where they are. So I always say at the end of talking to them, maybe part of the question is, what am I not asking that I should be? Or what things are going to add costs to this that I'm not seeing now? So some of the things that we run into, examples of ways that we've helped people who are opening new locations is going back to the architecture scene. If you wait until you sign a lease and then you hire your architect, that's one of the biggest areas where you can't undo things as a prospective tenant of a landlord location, because if you are opening a restaurant, local zoning codes determine your utility requirements and things like that. So let's say you are going into a restaurant and the local municipality decides how big the water line has to be. Well, landlords typically, if it's a brand new thing, are going to build that shell out to be a retail spot. They're not going to invest more in utilities and, HVAC and stuff than they need to. So when a restaurant goes in, they say, okay, well, that 1.25 inch water line that was originally built into that minor space now needs to be 1.5 inches. Well, then you find out through the local zoning that depending on where you are, it could be $30,000, it could be $60,000. I know where we are here in Colorado, there's things down in Douglas County that's a $150,000 change order. So when you go back to the landlord and you say, oh, you know what, Mr. Landlord, turns out that we need a larger water line and it's going to be $60,000 and we would like you to help contribute to that. We would like you to pay for that since that's a leasehold improvement in your building. Well, the landlord's going to turn around and he's going to say, you know what, there's this thing called a lease. Maybe you've heard of it.
And you signed it.
So, I'm sorry for you that you will be doing a very, very nice improvement to my building that I will now enjoy, whether it's you or the person after you or someone 10 years down the road. You can't walk away and I don't have to contribute. Wow. So again, you're doing the right things. You hired an architect, but it wasn't done at the right time. And you got all excited because you found, location. I found the great location. Bam. And you jumped on it. But you just didn't do like what you mentioned, and that 1/4 inch could cost a lot of money. And I just think that when you describe that example, that doesn't sound far-fetched, meaning, you could come up with a really obscure, this could happen to you if you don't do it the right time. And you're like, yeah, but how many times is that going to happen? Exactly.
What you just described, that sounds like that could come up pretty frequently, and it all could be preventable.
It happens frequently, and I think a lot of things, oftentimes, the established brands like McDonald's and, the big brands that have been around for a long time that are doing national and international development, they've grown to a point where they're large enough where they have people on their G&A budget who are helping franchisees get new locations open. But some of the new and emerging brands, and even some of the established brands for that matter, because they've been doing it for a while, but they're in-housing that, and it's not attorneys helping franchisees, and there's the national labor relations stuff where you have to be careful on the assistance that you give so that you're not a joint employer. But when they're looking at doing this kind of development, if you became a new franchisor, you probably haven't done a lot of this stuff anyway, and your job is to focus on being a franchisor. You're the parent company. You are now growing the brand. And we help the franchisees get new locations open without making some of those costly mistakes because, again, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of franchisees think that it's turnkey. I sign a franchise agreement and they give me a set of keys. And that is so not the case, and it shouldn't be the case. I mean, as a franchisee, you are now the business owner. It's your business, and there are tools and training and resources that are available, but not everything. And some of the other mistakes people make is they just don't hire the right people for the type of location that they're building.
Well, it's interesting. Before our interview, we were talking about when you met Marcus Lemonis, and he is famous for talking about people, process, and product. And what you just described was about a process. And I would suspect, or maybe I should ask, does your institute provide people that are looking to start a franchise with processes and checklists, even for things like that? Before you sign the lease, you need to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right. Through the National Franchise Institute, the primary program that the Institute was founded on is called Brick and Mortar Franchise Success. And that literally walks people from the time you hear about, making the decision to sign a franchise agreement. You've signed a franchise agreement, and now you come through. We are helping them with everything from the right corporate structure, accounting and tax strategies, because it's very different in the franchise world than it is in the private business world. There are things that you can do in the private business world that, from an accounting and tax standpoint, the IRS goes, that's not going to fly. So you need to know those things, and you need to hire the right accountants who deal in franchise accounting. And we talk about location intelligence. The franchisor can give you, here's your site selection criteria. That's the things that you can see. Here's your 1, 3, and 5 mile trade area, and here's your median household income and your target demographic. But we have a gentleman who teaches location intelligence that digs into sales tax data and census to find out of the 9,000 different attributes that go into who would be a potential draw for the type of location that you're building, where those locations can be found. And then, so we focus more on getting the locations open. We don't represent any brands. We don't help people say, oh, well, do you want to only work Monday through Friday? So this would be the kind of location for you. Once they make the decision of which brand they're going to go with, they come through the National Franchise Institute. And then we do have resources of people who can help them with the operations manuals and training manuals and the step-by-step stuff. But our focus really is the steps that need to happen, in what order, by who, how long each step should take, which things are prerequisites to things that happen further down the road, and what things can and should happen in tandem to keep things going so that you're opening on time and on budget.
And that's a process.
It is a process.
I mean, that, and it's I've heard it said, I forget who originally said this, but I'm sure many speakers, but success leaves clues. So I'm sure that there are successful franchises out there that somewhere down the line, this process, like let's do this piece of this process and that piece. Well, they're in the process because they work and they prevent issues. And when someone comes through your institute and you're given this process and this growth program, follow it. It's not like a list of recommendations. I mean, it is because it's your life and your business. But, boy, they're there for a reason, and they're there to help you grow or to prevent things from happening in your business.
Correct. That's funny. So one of my sayings is that the franchise model is brilliant. right? Its success across countless industries leaves people in awe of just what's possible when a proven business model is proved again and again and again. Yeah. And it's funny that some of the people who opted for the franchise model as a franchisee even, and then didn't follow the system and, didn't get the success, and then they're like, well, that didn't work. Well, did that not work, or did you not work that? So,
right.
They got.
Well, it reminds me of something that I say over and over and over again. And again, it might be something I've swiped and adapted over the years. But knowledge is power. That phrase, hey, everyone talks about knowledge is power, but it's not. That's not a true statement, because knowledge is only potential power. And in your example, the knowledge is, here's the process, here's the program that we just taught you. There you've got the knowledge, but it doesn't do any good until you implement it, execute it, and put it into action.
Right. And know why you're doing. What we teach in our program is, who to hire and why, who not to hire and why, what things you could potentially do on your own, and which things, once you find out what's really involved in it, you can self-assess and say, okay, I thought, project management was a no-brainer. It's not like I'm going to be the one doing it, right? I just need to make sure that that person does their job and that person does their job, and I can boss people around, so, I'm just going to do this project management on my own. And within the program, once they find out what's involved, that's the time to sit back and say, okay, wait a minute. Whoa, way more involved than I thought. And I can tell you right now, I would be in over my head, and that's not something that I can and should be. Is there a learning curve? Yes. Can you learn it? You sure can. But what's the opportunity cost to do the, to do the DIY route?
Yeah, and you guys teach on the growth strategies concept. Maybe can you speak on that as it relates to remaining independent versus franchising?
Absolutely. So the only two programs that we teach are the brick and mortar franchise success, helping people get new locations open without making costly mistakes in the process. And the other one is called growth strategies. And in a nutshell, that one is, should I franchise my business? Because independent entrepreneurs, like every franchise that ever started out, as an independent, and they got to proof of concept and said, wow, it's time to grow. So should I remain an independent the way I am now? Or should I look at the franchise model? And, of course, sitting around the Thanksgiving table, you've got well-intentioned family and friends saying, oh, this is so good, you should franchise, franchise. And for some people, it's the best decision they could make. And for other people, maybe not so much. And the time to figure out whether or not you should have is not after you've spent $250,000 to go, oh, my gosh, why did I ever do this? This was not the right move for me. So that program really is, from a legal, tax, accounting, and financial, we walk you through the pros and cons of remaining an independent the way you are. And then we walk people through the pros and cons from a legal, tax, accounting, and financial of here's the pros and cons of pursuing the franchise model. And we don't care which option they select. It's such a personal decision. Any concept can franchise, should yours, and it has more to do with your age, your health, the health of your marriage, the age of your kids, your financial resources, those kinds of things that are very personal decisions. And then we pivot to talking about the similarities, but more the front-end similarities. Regardless of whether or not you are going to remain an independent or pursue the franchise model, you want to create something that is scalable. So then we talk about the front-end stuff, like, is your trademark protected? Here's what you need to know about that. If you're building a brick-and-mortar location, let's proactively tell you things that will help you value engineer your drawings so that you're not replicating a costly thing, 10, 20, 50, 100 times. And we're also helping them calculate the development timeline, having realistic expectations about how long the process takes and how much it's going to cost. Then you're doing a franchise disclosure document, and a new franchisor needs to disclose what the development costs are going to be. And a lot of new franchisors unknowingly make mistakes in that area because they use their actual costs from past restaurants as opposed to calculating costs for what would truly be a replicatable brand that someone else could see those same costs in a location that they build.
One thing that you said a few minutes ago, I think a lot of people don't pick up on or understand, and so let me make sure that I understood it right, and let's make sure that we can clarify this, because it could be a big aha moment for people, which is you chose a franchise organization to go with, so you go there and they get you signed up, and now you're a franchisee of this certain organization. They still need the National Franchise Institute, because there are so many things that the franchise, or if I'm saying that right, doesn't provide, not out of maliciousness or not giving you support. It's just pure business principles that you need to know before you go into moving forward on your franchise. They give you all of the things they do, but there's so much more as far as gaps are concerned that the National Franchise Institute will make sure they fill in so that you've got a holistic, full opportunity.
Right. One of the reasons that you want to be part of a franchise brand and you want to become a franchisee of a concept that's working is because they're doing things right.
Mm-hmm.
So part of doing things right means they need to focus on the brand and growing the brand, which is why you wanted to be part of them. So if they're, put it this way, if you're doing your job, trying to get your location open, and they're doing your job, who's doing their job? I mean,
why do they
can't
you?
focus on their job and your job at the same time.
Yep.
So it's that fine line of where they stop and where you start, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah, so I think that's a big eye-opener is, some of these franchise fees are hefty to get in, and there's a lot of the schools and institutes that they would have that they're going to run you through, but it's kind of like the example of when you're a dentist or a doctor. Great, now you can work on teeth or work on people, but they might not have given you the training on how to open up your practice and run it and hire and tax things and marketing. Oh, my word, listen, even talking about marketing. So getting in those gaps filled will give you the best chance for succeeding in that franchise.
Correct. In some instances, we are completely the outsourced development training arm for franchise brands.
Mm-hmm.
People sign a franchise agreement, and then their first step is to come through the National Franchise Institute, because the franchisor teaches operations and how to operate it once it's open. We are the immediate, there's nothing to operate until it's open. So we help them on the front end stuff. And, we don't do the operations part. That we don't ever try to tell people this is how you should do this from an operations standpoint. This is how you should do a labor schedule. That's not our area. And then for other brands, we become a supplement to what they're already doing. Mm-hmm. So they've got people inside who manage what their design looks like. So they've got people figuring out what the prototype, what the signature look looks like, and the changes that they need to make. They keep track of the master drawings for the locations, but they're not the ones who help you hire the architects and customize drawings for your location. So that's where we come into play.
Well, I'm sure we could talk for about 4.5 more hours and come up with so many more aha moments, but what is the best way that someone can learn more about the various programs you provide and the National Franchise Institute training program?
Well, our website is nationalfranchiseinstitute.com, and we've got tabs on the website for franchisees, franchisors, and prospective franchisees to help the targeted audience there. And, in the brick and mortar program, like probably the one parting thought, this is the one thing that resonates with people, is if you are going to build a new location, you've signed a franchise agreement and you are going to build a location, do not sign a lease before you get educated in some of these critical areas.
And let's say that someone hears that and goes, okay, got it. Well, how long is this education period? Is this a 3 to 6 month education, or is it just a few interactions with you to make sure you have your ducks in a row?
Both of the programs are 2-day interactive in-person programs here, and they go a full 2 days, always on a Monday, Tuesday, because if people come to Colorado from other places, they want to come and enjoy the beautiful scenery and stuff here before they go into a program. And we have each of the subject matter experts coming throughout those 2 days. And then we host a cocktail and hors d'oeuvre event on Monday night so that the participants in the program and the presenters in the program and other folks who come to participate in that have time to get to know each other and really talk about their businesses and how they can help each other.
Neat. I mean, that's a short, easy time frame that you're not going to derail the process on signing that lease. So that's a great point to take away from. So Carolyn, is really wonderful to get to know you and your business, and look forward to connecting with you in the future.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.